This is something that I inculcated in IIT Hyderabad when I founded. मेरे को इस इंस्टीट्यूट से nerds नहीं चाहिए. We were a country which had only 100 computers in India. 600 million people, 100 computers. और हमारी कंट्री में सबसे बड़ा वीकनेस है हम R&D में इन्वेस्ट ही नहीं करते. जब हम सिंगापुर गए थे तो हमसे सबसे पहले ये लोग पूछते थे आपको कंप्यूटर बनाना किसने सिखाया? वॉकड अप टू से ये फटफटी कहाँ से आ गई?
सीधे नेहरू जी से पूछा आपने?
हाँ. We had a target of selling $1 million worth of computers in 6 months. Which we did.
कुछ अंदाजा लग रहा था कि इंडिया आईटी सर्विसेज में गोइंग टू बी अ ग्लोबल प्लेयर.
तो हमने बोला भाई हम जॉब नहीं ऑफर कर रहे हैं. We are offering you an adventure. I created literally the mobile revolution in India. I brought Nokia to India, made them successful. सारी कंट्री में हर जगह चाइनीज CCTVs लगे हुए थे. उनको हमारे हर रोड हर विलेज के बारे में ज्ञान है. Something I want to tell all startups that if you don't ask, you don't get.
Ajay, welcome to SparX.
Thank you.
Looking forward to this conversation. I got a chance to read your book, Just Aspire, last few days and thoroughly enjoyed the book. You know, it's a great blend of your personal journey, but also how India tech ecosystem has evolved because you've been at the forefront from very early on. But the book kind of, catches your attention from the beginning. You talk about this story. Growing up, you had a tiger pet as a, tiger cub as a pet.
Yeah.
How did that happen? That's not many people grow up with a tiger as a pet.
You see, my father was in the IAS and in MP. And he used to he traveled a lot. उन दिन touring बहुत होती थी. Jeep पे बैठ के touring होती थी.
अच्छा.
So when he went for one of his tours, and MP is full of tigers. Wherever you.
Or was.
हर जगह. नहीं अभी भी बहुत है. अभी काफी है. So, but those days, you could even see a tiger on a road. And I've seen it personally. So, उन दिनों ये हुआ कि एक दिन वो जा रहे थे कहीं and he suddenly saw that one of the tigers has been killed. And the cubs were floating around. So this one particular cub was, coming and crossing the road, coming up and down. Very nifty fellow. So उन्होंने बोला कि ये तो अब अकेले हैं, orphan हैं, चलो ले चलते. So that's how I got a tiger cub.
How old were you at the time?
I was, I think, maybe 8 or 10. And then, of course, he was with me for barely a short period. Because those days क्या होता था कि वो मच्छर भगाने के लिए DDT डालते थे. So he ate up DDT.
Okay.
And he died, unfortunately. Then, of course, I was very, very upset. So my father said, don't worry, I'll do something for you. So he got it embalmed. And he was kept in my room.
For how long?
Quite many years. I used to pull his pooch and all that. Pooch toot gayi thi uske.
That's quite
So it was a very interesting time,
Yeah. And speaking of interesting time, you also had at some point Jawaharlal Nehru show up at your home for dinner. I mean, that's again quite extraordinary. And I think you talk about that in book in a lot of detail. And
of course. Well, because my father was the, the commissioner there.
Right.
So he decided to visit Khajuraho. And before going to Khajuraho, he said that I'll drop in at your home. And so he and Indira ji dropped into our home. Of course, those days Indira was very young. And as he walked up, lots and lots of motorcycles were there in front. So I walked up to him and said, ये फटफटी कहाँ से आ गई यहाँ?
सीधे नेहरू जी से पूछा आपने?
हाँ. तो उन्होंने बोला कि मेरे आगे तो फटफटी ही चलती है. क्योंकि मेरे को सिक्योरिटी चाहिए होती है. Then I noticed that he had an injury in his hand. तो मैंने कहा, नेहरू जी ये क्या हो गया आपको? कहते वो गाड़ी में अटक गया था मेरा हाथ. अच्छा. तो वहाँ से मेरी कहानी शुरू हुई.
Oh, amazing. And then you did your engineering in Jabalpur, I think.
Yes.
And you decided to pursue a path which I think your father initially wasn't very comfortable
with. Not at all. I mean, he was very much wanting both me and my brother to be in IAS. And I took a different path because first of all, I did engineering. And those days, people from engineering never went into IAS. आजकल तो बहुत आते हैं.
Correct.
So that was the start of not going to IAS. And then, of course, I went a different way.
And pretty much right after your engineering, very early, you decided to, get involved in founding of HCL, I think 76.
Yes.
Which must be pretty unconventional, uncommon in the startup ka idea, wo bhi, computers mein. Like, how was that? What was the thought process? If you go back and think about those days, वो कैसे start हुआ?
देखिए उन दिनों तो स्टार्टअप नाम की कोई चीज़ ही नहीं होती थी. So हम लोग जब we were all in DCM and then one day we all came down to Delhi. I was posted in Bombay those days. So came down to Delhi and then there was a conference being held, sales conference. So Shiv Nadar, Arjun Malhotra, all of us were there. And then by that time, both Shiv and Arjun had got upset with the way DCM was being run. DCM Data Products was being run. Because DCM was such a large company. और DCM Data Products को पैसे नहीं मिलते थे. तो उनका cash flow used to be a major problem. तो उस चक्कर में बातचीत चल रही थी तो उन्होंने बोला यार यहाँ तो आगे कुछ बन नहीं रहा. We had started making a computer in DCM those days. We were those days making calculators.
Right.
So computer की काम शुरू हो गया था. R&D बहुत अच्छी थी DCM के पास. तो हम लोग ने सोचा कि भाई let's start our own computer company. And about 10-12 of us were offered that join up to create this. So out of those 8 or 10-12, only 4 of us said yes. 6 dropped out. And I think they must be kicking themselves.
I can't even possibly imagine, in retrospect, Surprisingly, my entrepreneurial story was also similar. So I was in Bay Area and I found 2 of my colleagues, they agreed to start a company with me in Mintra and move back to India. और मूव होने के 1 हफ्ते पहले दोनों ने बोला कि नहीं आ पाएंगे, फैमिली कमिटमेंट ये वो. तो ऐसे कोई बात नहीं, मतलब I moved back alone and eventually found some other co-founders and thank you.
ऐसे ही होता है because people chicken out because they just can't take the risk. And they're all used to getting salaries and then all that, logo, salary, all those issues are there, which I talk about in my book also. You're so fond, so carried away by your logo that you don't want to do something on your own, which is not a right thing to do. And उन दिनों तो ये था कि we were a country which had only 100 computers in India. 100 computers. 600 million people, 100 computers.
So HCL का initial mandate was to try to build computers?
Yes. Day one, our decision was the way we had started out in DCM, हम वही knowledge को लेके we will start designing and making a computer. But the challenge was कि उन दिनों हर चीज़ को शुरू करने के लिए you needed a license. And to get a license was very tough for us. Vague startup like ours, के 6 लोग इकट्ठे होके काम कर रहे हैं, कोई background नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है. And what funding did we put together? We put together 1.86 lakhs. So there was nothing to show to the government. And the government says, आप लोग क्या बात कर रहे हैं? You'll never be able to do it. So there's no way we'll give you a license. So then what we did was that, चलो हम कुछ करके दिखाते हैं. So we started a little marketing company. And we went and bought calculators from others and we started marketing them. And later on, we even branded them. So through that, we created cash flow and also some kind of branding. And in the meantime, we kept looking for a license. And we were given a clear indication from the government कि आपको तो मिलेगा नहीं.
And this was licensed to manufacture PCs.
To manufacture. Anything you wanted to make in India, you had a license. So anyway, we finally found that UP government was sitting with a license, not knowing what to do with it. So very lucky, we found that out. We went to meet the UP government. They were very open. And there was a gentleman called Colonel Rai. He was the managing director of Uptron. And he said, yes, why not? So we gave them 26% equity.
Okay.
And we kept 74% with an agreement to buy back after 5 years.
Okay, got it.
So it was a joint sector undertaking of UP government. Now that helped us to get the license. And also helped us to get funding from banks. Because moment you said you were a joint sector company, there was a lot of credibility. And the other thing that we did was that, this is something I tell all startups, be careful about choosing your name of the company.
Right.
आपका नाम बढ़िया होना चाहिए। और उन दिनों में तो हमें बहुत ज़रूरत थी। वी वर अ स्टार्टअप, छोटे से लोग थे, तो हमने कहा हिंदुस्तान नाम ज़रूर होना चाहिए। तो जब हम हिंदुस्तान नाम लेने गए ROC में, तो उन्होंने कहा भाई ये तो सिर्फ बड़ी कंपनीज को दिया जाता है या पब्लिक सेक्टर को दिया जाता है। सो देन वी टोल्ड कर्नल राय कि ये तो नाम चाहिए। तो कहते कोई बात नहीं, शुरू करो। मैंने नहीं, देखिए हम लोग चाहते हैं कि नाम हो। सो फाइनली वी कन्विंस्ड ROC कि हम लोग जॉइंट सेक्टर हैं।
अच्छा,
तो हमें मिल गया।
ओके।
And I can tell you that was a great breakthrough for us, because when my salespeople carried a Hindustan Computers Limited card with in brackets written joint sector undertaking of UP government, the entry was fantastic.
Of course, yeah.
People thought we were big. We actually were very small.
And I think the book you also mentioned, you started literally, you call it Barsati, where there was like
That's where we started.
अभी Bay Area में garage startup बहुत
Correct.
glamorous है, but I think literally it was a garage startup. So, how were initial years, Ajay? I mean, usual struggle तो होते हैं, but I can imagine in those days, when did you see first, clear success कि कुछ हो रहा है यहाँ पे, चल सकता है?
देखिए हमको तो सक्सेस लकीली फर्स्ट ईयर में ही मिल गई।
अच्छा।
क्योंकि हमने सबसे पहले एक इंजीनियरिंग साइंटिफिक कंप्यूटर बनाया और उसका डिज़ाइन हम लोग कर रहे थे। एंड देन वी डिसाइडेड दैट वी विल गो एंड हायर द बेस्ट पीपल, बिकॉज पीपल इज व्हाट मेक द कंपनी फर्स्ट। So we went to IIM Calcutta and made a presentation to them. So when we finished the presentation, everybody was zapped with the whole idea that a young guys are actually going after making a computer. So they were all thrilled to see the presentation, but then realization struck suddenly कि भाई will it last? So बहुत सारे लोग हमसे बात करने आए बाद में कि what do you think will be, how will you survive? It's such a big issue.
Yeah.
तो हमने बोला भाई हम जॉब नहीं ऑफर कर रहे हैं, we are offering you an adventure. If you want a job, don't join us. If you want adventure, join us and we'll give you the highest salary in the country, which of course was princely sum of 2,000 rupees. So वहाँ से हमारी कहानी शुरू हुई. We would hire the best. And then we trained these people. So one of the big strengths of HCL was that we had a way of actually selecting people in a particular scientific way, which we had learnt in DCM, which was, this was a theory created by McClellan in Harvard, where you actually looked for a specific type of person. And this person was what we called need for achievement people. So there were three types of needs: need for achievement, need for power, need for affiliation. We could test people and figure out who had the need for achievement.
So what was the test like, because this is something, companies even today struggle, hardest thing to do is to attract right kind of talent. तो आप ये need for achievement को test के लिए just थोड़ा सा give us some flavor कि क्या test करेंगे?
उसमें क्या होता है कि we would give them a picture and we'll give them 3-4 pictures and say write a story around this. So they were all asked to write a story. And 3-4 stories they wrote. After they've written the story, we were all trained to spot words used by them. So if the words indicated need for achievement, we would underline them. And so this guy has put 10 words for towards achievement. Another person has put 10 words for power. Somebody has put 10 words for affiliation. Now, what happens is that the guy who's got a need for achievement, that salesperson will go and get the deal. The guy who's got power tried to influence the customer to think I'm better than you. Affiliation fellow will do something totally different. वो उससे दोस्ती कर लेगा पर धंधा नहीं लाएगा.
समझ गया.
So उस direction में हमने we selected always the best people in sales, and HCL was known to have killer instinct in terms of sales. So I must tell you, the initial story was so amazing. We were still designing the product. There was no product ready. But the sales people were told, you got to sell. No product. So we created a beautiful brochure. We trained them how to sell. And then we said, okay, go out in the field. So everybody went out to different parts of the country. Arjun, my co-founder, he said, I'll go get the first order. So since he came from IIT Kharagpur, कहता मैं जाके अपने professor से order लाता हूँ. And he did that. Moment he got the first order, all of us went to every IIT and got repeat orders.
Amazing, amazing.
And then it sort of started to move. But in the meantime, the product was not ready. Can you imagine we sold a product without a product? I have not heard of anybody else doing this.
Yeah, and this is also big lesson for startups even today, right?
Yeah.
It's especially if you're targeting enterprise,
Yes.
the business will only begin when someone is willing to take a bet on you and that skill set to be able to go convince and all that. So this need for achievement test, did it last in HCL for a long period of time?
Every time.
तो अभी तक चलता है?
अब मुझे पता नहीं है. But I think the companies become bigger and bigger and bigger. But I must tell you, HCL salespeople are the best in the world.
Right. No,
Wherever we go, if we went into an account in India, people were scared of us.
Yeah. I'm tempted to ask a lot of questions about that because building great sales team itself is for especially enterprise company makes all the difference, and a lot of companies struggle.
It's the only reason for winning if you have the right sales team.
Right. And just Ajay, so we are talking about this almost 50 years ago. So उस वक्त तो the computers, especially desktop computers, PC was in infancy. I think Apple would have just launched their initial Mac 1. IBM didn't launch their PC, I think, until early 80s.
Yes.
So this must make you guys among the first in the world really to put together a desktop PC, if I'm assuming that's what you were.
We didn't have a desktop.
Okay.
We had a tabletop. But it was exactly at the same time when Apple introduced its PC. So we were actually global pioneers. We didn't know that, of course. We were so small, inward-looking country, छोटा सा country. कौन देखता है इंडिया में क्या हो रहा है?
Right.
So it was never got reported. कि भाई, this is one of those pioneering companies.
Right.
But we managed to design everything. That time, what was happening was that microprocessors had just made appearance. तो हमने बोला कि माइक्रोप्रोसेसर लेके हम कंप्यूटर्स बनाए.
This was like 8008 or something.
हाँ, वो सब पुराने हैं, पुराने. First product we made from a Rockwell product, PPS4.
Okay.
And then we went into Intel and we created the commercial product.
Right.
And the commercial product was again a big success. So we actually saw success very early. And by the time 1980 came, there was a group of people from Singapore who were visiting India. And they sort of suggested that you guys, why don't you come to Singapore to make computers? We don't have anybody.
Manufacture in Singapore.
So I was in Madras. My baby was just born, eldest son. And Shiv Nadar comes to Madras and says, Ajay, tumhe Singapore jana hai. Typical HCL. You don't get time to do things. You have to do things yesterday. So हम तो प्लेन पे बैठ के सिंगापुर चले गए. वहाँ काफी मार्केट रिसर्च हम लोग ने करी हुई थी. तो उसके बेसिस पे हमको पता था कि what should we do. So very early days, we learned this thing that when we were selling calculators, even when we were selling computers, that you don't sell a product, you sell a solution.
Right.
So we launched the company in Singapore with a campaign which said full page ad in straight time. We could ill afford it, but he said, "Hui karna hai." So full page ad saying, we don't sell computers, we sell computerization.
Right.
And then we describe the complete package.
Right.
So we said, we'll do the hardware for you, we'll do the software, we'll design the software for you, we will train you, we'll give you a cassette which will also be kept with you so that you can learn in your separately. And if you don't know still how to run it, for a few months we will put one of our guys there. So to do that, we had to do something unique. We had to actually create a software factory in Chennai. Because we used to we do the system study in Singapore, send it back to Chennai for it being developed. So software used to be developed here and it would come on floppies.
Oh, हाँ, exactly. वही मैं पूछने वाला था. उसको तो इंटरनेट में कुछ नहीं था, right?
ही नहीं.
तो आप फ्लॉपी कुरियर से भेजते थे.
कुरियर से भेजते थे. और वो एक्सरे में खराब हो जाती थी.
हाँ.
So it would go up and down. I mean, we went through quite a lot of challenges to make it happen. But when we decided to go to Singapore, we didn't have enough funds. RBI पैसे देता नहीं था to go abroad for a company. So we were told that you have to, in a meeting, we all discussed that cash flow is the critical aspect. So we had a target of selling $1 million worth of computers in 6 months, which we did.
Incredible.
So that's how we established ourselves in Singapore. That became the window to the world. We learned a lot about things there. And then
So
we just grew out of that.
right, and HCL ka roots were in hardware, building computers, etc. But at some point, HCL started to also get into IT services, which is obviously
Which is later. But you must understand one thing, we were probably the first company in the country to set up a software factory. And we had actual processes which we created there, which it automated programming very early days. We created tools because we felt that if it took too long to make, the customer in Singapore is not going to wait.
Got it. So by software factory, you mean this automation process to be able to just produce software, very quickly.
We actually have brand names for each of those products that we created for doing all this. So we were pioneers in doing that. And at that time, we had no idea that software exports was a business. This is selling computerization.
Right. So okay, उसके लिए आपने बनाना शुरू किया. At some point, that the skill set was available.
Got created in the company.
And then eventually the demand started coming. And also let's talk about industry overall, zooming out of HCL, because this is a time, I think TCS was founded a little early, Infosys around same time.
Infosys came much later. 80s.
Achha.
All of Wipro, Infosys are 80s. We are 76.
Got it.
TCS existed because TCS was part of Tata's at that time. Tata, I think TCE was the company out of which TCS was born.
Right.
Where they had this great leader, which everybody knows about. Right. It's called father of software.
तो उस वक्त like let's say around 1980 के आसपास कुछ अंदाजा लग रहा था कि इंडिया IT सर्विसेज में going to be a global player, और मतलब
हवा ही नहीं थी.
हवा नहीं थी.
हम लोग तो we were living in a well. छोटी सी country, छोटा सा GDP. Who knew India? India was a snake charmer type फंडा यार. वो लोग वैसे ही सोचते थे हमको. जब हम सिंगापुर गए थे तो हमसे सबसे पहले ये लोग पूछते थे आपको कंप्यूटर बनाना किसने सिखाया. एंड वो पूछते थे कि भाई हम तो वी कंसिडर इंडियंस एज कॉर्नर शॉप वाला. इट वाज वेरी टफ टू सेल इन सिंगापुर बिकॉज they thought of us as some fellows who are rubber plantation people. That's how Singapore, Malaysia happened. And corner shop wala.
Right.
But anyway, we established it.
Right.
I must tell you, 10 years later, we were number one computer company in India.
Wow.
So 1976 to 80s.
And this somewhere in this also there is as a country के point of view से miss opportunity वाला angle भी है, because late 70s में चाइना में I don't think कोई भी कंप्यूटर बना रहा होगा.
कुछ नहीं था.
Right.
कुछ नहीं था. सिर्फ अमेरिका में था और कुछ यूके में था और कुछ यूरोप में था और कहीं नहीं था.
Right. So and we had by the
we
time
had 5, 7, 10, 15 companies around that time. It's not that we were born as a single company. We had competition from day one.
और 5 IITs थे, CDAC था, which was a pioneer in its day, and so on.
CDAC came much later. ECIL was the beginning
right? Okay.
Of hardware.
Right.
So the hardware revolution in India started then, and this got lost later, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And because there was so much focus on software as a tool, that hardware was forgotten.
Which is a big missed opportunity. I know in your current avatar, you are, I think, working day and night to try to,
it's a revival mode.
But thoda sa matlab one can do the missed opportunity also.
Yes.
But the stars were aligned, things could have taken a
Yes. We could have been leaders in the world, as good or better than China. Because the brains were there, Designing brains were there. Designing brains were then there later and today.
कुछ आपको अंदाजा है कि where we lost the steam, क्या हुआ 80s और 90s में कि मतलब somehow this despite being a pioneer early start, somewhere वो thrust नहीं मिला, and then things.
देखिए उन दिनों क्या हुआ कि RBI was a pioneer in one thing. They wanted to computerize banks around 83, 84, 85, that period, and they came up with a strategy. They said all products have to be Unix operating system. I thought that created the software business out of India. A lot of people don't know that. So, हम लोगों को by force we were told all your computers that you sell into banks and financial institutions have to be Unix. So what do? There was no Unix operating system available off the shelf. So we went to AT&T. We bought the source code of Unix.
Okay.
Unix was a scientific engineering operating system. So we had to convert that to a commercial operating system. So we added a lot of features into the source code and created a commercial Unix, which we then launched in India. And that capability enabled us to not just create single processor machines. But over a period of time, we created multi-processor, fine-grained Unix machines, which were again first in the world. So I'm talking late 80s when something like this we had launched and very successfully launched. And then one day, that time, McKinsey was entering India. And so McKinsey came to us and said, you are the largest hardware company in India. We'd like to partner with you. We'd like you to do a project for you. So हमने बोला भाई we can't afford you. They said no. We'll do it pro bono, but we want you as a customer. So they looked at our whole company, they looked at our technology, they looked at our R&D, and they came up with this whole crazy idea of saying, go to the US.
To sell
Make your computers in America.
Make your computers in America.
Yes. Because they said, your multi-processor, fine-grained Unix product is one of its kinds. And you will have great success if you take it to America. So lo and behold, we went to ICICI, borrowed 5 crores, and we set up a manufacturing plant in Silicon Valley.
Incredible.
Okay? Taking coal to Newcastle in a manner.
ये late 80s की बात है.
This I'm talking 90.
90, okay.
So what happened was, then we started working there. We set up the factory. One of the partners moved there, and we started selling. We made some great sales, and I think we had orders of at least $10-20 million. And those days, that was a lot of money. So after having got those orders, we had 2 problems that we ran into. Problem number 1 is that the product had one issue which was not approved by the United States government. That had to be corrected, which McKinsey had not seen. And then the second was that we got a large order from a company, and that company got bought over by somebody. So that order vanished. And then we ran into this technical issue. So what are we going to do? Suddenly, 5 crores loan to be returned. You're sitting in America, spending US dollars, having employees, having a factory which will no longer run. That's when we pivoted.
To
software. And we took our strength, which is R&D. And we were the first company in the country to actually do R&D exports, which of course is a big business today out of India. So it's called ER&D by NASCOM. So we took our people and went and put them into R&D of different companies and said, we'll design for you. We actually, a lot of our people held patents actually designing the product for Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard didn't have a product like this. So we went and did that, and that's how our journey into software started.
And then, in 90s, I guess, probably by Y2K or around, this IT service industry just took off in a big way.
Everybody else took off except HCL. Because we were still domestic, we were still hardware oriented. We had not become big enough to be in the Y2K game. We were not there in the software services business. We were there in the engineering export business.
Got it.
Our focus was totally different. We started slowly doing software, but it was very small. So Y2K we completely missed.
I see.
Everybody else took off because of the Y2K. We couldn't.
Right.
And then something happened which sort of got us going, which is that around that period, India was left with no foreign exchange. So we were forced to, we could not make our computers.
This was in the early 90s.
Yes. So then we changed tack. We said, if we are going to be dependent on imports, we are going to die. So somehow we said we must be in exports. And that's how the thought of exports started, because we'd already done all this. We signed an agreement with Hewlett-Packard to form a joint venture company. We were one of the early ones to, do that. But we retained our identity. And when we created the joint venture, we gave them 26%. And we called it HCL Hewlett-Packard. HCL came first, Hewlett-Packard came second. And, that's how we sort of learned something. We learned a lot from HP. We learned how to make very high quality products. We learned how to run a global company. And that was the beginning of our global thinking, global creative, creating the global company. post the 7 years itch that we had with Hewlett Packard and bought back the equity, that's when we really took off into the software business. And that company was originally, what we did was took out the R&D from HCL and called it HCL Technologies. Originally, it was called HCL Consulting, then we named it HCL Technologies because it's a technology company selling technology services. And then HCL Technologies got formed. And we were coming to a stage of the time we felt that only way for us to succeed was through acquisitions to catch up with the rest. Infosys was far ahead. Wipro was ahead. Everybody was ahead of us. So we said the only option is to go for an IPO.
Yeah.
So we decided to go for an IPO in New York.
This was in 90s.
We are talking about 2000.
2000.
So we actually moved the company headquarters to New York.
Okay.
And we said we will go for a New York Stock Exchange listing. But then the market went down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The bubble had burst.
Right.
And India was doing well. So we switched back. And when we switched back, we had this challenge that India only allowed you to go for an IPO if you gave away 25%. And that was a lot to give away. Anyway, that's what we decided to do.
Got it.
But before going for an IPO, we didn't have enough backlog of orders in the US.
Yeah.
So what do? So we came up with an audacious plan. And this is typical HCL. So we came up with this whole plan that we will do something completely different than anybody else had ever done in the world.
Yeah.
Which is give away customer stock options.
Customer stock options. वो क्या होते हैं?
मैं बताता हूँ आपको. तो हम करीब 10-15 customers के पास गए. Top customers. Rockwell, Collins, a whole bunch of these. Very good companies. And we said, if you give us a $75 million order, we'll give you part of the company.
Yeah.
And when it goes for a listing, you'll get everything free.
Yeah.
So it was an offer they could not refuse.
Yeah.
It's like grandfather type,
Yeah. Okay.
So we gave those offers to about 15, 20 of them. We got 8 orders of 75 million.
Amazing.
So that gave us backlog to show for a listing. And when we went for a listing, we were subscribed, those days, oversubscribed 23 times. And we also managed to convince the government that for this area, we should not give away 26%, 25%. So allow us to do 10%.
So Ajay, you as you were going through 80s and 90s, and looks like at some point HCL had a bit of a pivot from hardware into software and so on. Eventually, post your listing and so on, things fell into place, and HCL is obviously massive company. But HCL is a part of the largest story of India IT services, which, as you said earlier, is $280 billion of exports.
Yeah,
that's incredible size and impact in what it's doing for countries. Perhaps underappreciated, under-acknowledged. Because today, startups which raise a lot of money are in the news and everyone talks about them, but this is like real contribution nation building.
You see, when we got deeper after our IPO, we said that the only way for us to succeed is to do acquisitions.
Right.
And we did global acquisitions, not Indian acquisitions. Chote-mote India mein kuch kiye the. But the growth happened because of our global ambitions and wanting to get reach into different countries. So our approach was, let's go buy companies that have reach in different parts of the world and also acquire some technology capability and design capability, etc., etc. So we did a mix of engineering companies and software services because we were very weak in software services. So we bought a lot of software services companies. And then we worked out that implementation of large software products was also a very big business that was starting. SAP, Oracle, all of that. So we started looking at that as well. And so in a period of, I think, 4, 5, 7 years, we bought about 17, 18 companies in HCL Technologies. And we learned how to integrate them. But one of the biggest benefits of that was that we increased our revenue manyfold. And then we also managed to get entry into accounts globally.
Right.
Because we had customer-facing companies that we would buy.
And ISCO did require financial structuring, etc.? Because buying companies is expensive. Did you use leverage for acquisitions?
Of course, it was a mix of debt and equity. And I remember a very interesting incident that happened. We had become, my business, which was the hardware business, had become 10, 12,000 crores. When I took over, it was 400 crores. It became 10, 12,000 crores because I created literally the mobile revolution in India. I brought Nokia to India, made them successful. We actually wanted to be in the telecom business. We applied for a telecom license in Chennai. We won the license with a joint venture with Singapore Telecom. But Singapore Telecom backed off after we got the contract because they said we are so busy in China, we can't come to India. So we lost telecom. And so we said, what do you do? So we looked at adjacencies. And the best adjacency was hardware. So we went to Nokia and said, why don't we do business in India? We started to manufacture pagers for them in India. That's how we started. Chota sa business. And then from there, we started to create the telecom.
I think most of people listening to this will not understand what pager is. थोड़ा बताइए
पेजर उन दिनों क्या होता था कि फोन तो आप टू वे कम्युनिकेशन होता है. Pager you attach here and to your belt and then give you a beep and you can actually get a message which you then respond. Okay. So pager is a one-way communication. You get a communication, then you send back a communication.
So was there a period in Indian business life? ये pager आप इंडिया के लिए बना रहे थे कि एक्सपोर्ट करने के लिए?
इंडिया के लिए बना रहे थे. Because Nokia wanted to enter India.
अच्छा.
There was a tender that came out from the government for buying pagers.
Okay.
And Nokia and us did a manufacturing. We put our manufacturing plant. We put up Nokia pager manufacturing.
So was there a period here? And I think in those days I was in the US in the early 2000s. But a lot of government employees, business executives, what they all wear pager on their belts?
Yeah, they used to wear. All service people used to wear.
Okay.
Services business was very important for pagers,
Right.
Because there was no other way to reach people.
Right.
So it's all started from there. And then I've sort of diverted into this business, but should I talk about telecom or not?
No, please. Yeah.
So when I got the Nokia business, it took us 6 years to get something done. Because we were starting in 95 and we were till 2000 we were struggling because the cost of the product is so high. So we did something unique. What we had done in hardware, we did in phones. In hardware, we set up an association called Manufacturers Association of Information Technology, MATE. We found the members. And we said the only way to change the government rules and regulations is to go through an association. It's the right way to do. That's when we set up ICA. We were founder members of Indian, Cellular Association. And through that route, we actually managed to convince the government to change the complete ecosystem. The duties were very high. The VAT was, every state was very high. All of those things were high. Then the central government rules were very difficult. If you made a call those days, the calling party had to pay. Ridiculous. But that's the way it was. Cost of a call was so high. Cost of 16 rupees was the cost of a call. And the cost of the gadget was too high. So, and I never used to bother about the Nokia business because it was a very small unit in my business. I used to call it second decimal place business. I used to joke with them. I said, तुम्हारे सामने क्यों time waste करूँगा? So I actually never used to review that. So one day, this whole team walked into my office from the Nokia sales team. And they said, boss, these Nokia guys are coming here. Why don't you help us convince them to correct the price for India? So we sat down, created a strategy, and we used a model which we had used earlier. So when we did negotiation with Microsoft for our hardware, we went to electronics department and said, all companies in India will buy genuine software, but you negotiate with Microsoft for a better price for India. They did. Same thing we did for Oracle. Oracle changed its price in India. So these two examples I used to convince Nokia. And I said, guys, if you are going to operate in India, India is a very price-sensitive market. You cannot succeed. So they said, what should be the price? That time price was 16,000.
For the handset?
For handset. I said, this is crazy. So this team was sitting there and they said, what should be the price for it? So out of the blue, I said 9,900. So they were shocked. They said, how can we get this price? Because if we do this price in India, we have to change the price globally. So sorry, we can't do it. So I said, fine, you'll never succeed. They went away. 4 weeks later, they came back and said yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned from then. I mean, this is something I want to tell all startups that if you don't ask, you don't get.
Don't get, yeah.
So it's very simple.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got it. And they said, I had given them a commitment. If you give us this price, this is how much we'll sell. In 6 months, we overshot the sales. So they came back to celebrate. And I think I remember the party was in the Oberoi rooftop. And after 2-3 drinks, they all said, no, let's come and sit and discuss further. So 4 of us went there and sat with them. And I said, they said, what next? So I said, you tell us what next. They said, no, you tell us how to further go in and make this market happen.
Yeah.
So I said, 6,000. Should be the price. I said, you do that, you just won't see the end of the day in this country. Within a few days, they agreed for a price point of 6,600.
This was what, 2004-5 time frame?
Yeah, around that time. The market just
Exploded. Yeah.
exploded. And we did something very interesting which was not done anywhere in the world. Again, we have this thing in HCL about innovating, being different, etc., because that's how you succeed. So, उन्होंने बोला कि भाई, our model for sales is that you sell through Airtel, you sell through all the, services company.
Yeah.
हमने बोला कि देखो अगर हम सर्विस कंपनी के चक्कर में पड़े तो हम अपना बिजनेस नहीं इंक्रीज कर पाएंगे. Because all of us used to go and sit in Sunil Mittal's office. वो उसके रिसेप्शन पे बैठे होते थे हमारे सेल्स में बंदे कि कब ऑर्डर देंगे वो. I said, it became very frustrating. So we decided for the first time in the country to separate service and product.
So directly आप consumer.
Directly हम consumer के पास जाएंगे. So we created a distribution strategy.
Yeah.
And we modeled our distribution strategy on how Hindustan Lever sells soaps. Actually, Ram Charan has written about it in his book.
Achha.
So we came up with this whole idea of selling through large distribution companies.
Yeah.
Each of them were big companies. A lot of them are very professional companies. So we put together 110 redistribution stockists all over the country. And they were very powerful companies. They understood dealers. They knew how to collect from dealers. So that's how we created a great market. And from literally, I mean, every month what we used to sell, we started selling in a day. And we created another model, which was very interesting. I used to call it the ODI model of sales, which is one day international में क्या होता है आपका run rate होता है. हमने daily run rate दे दिया sales people.
Right.
They were shocked. They said, sir, आप क्या कर रहे हो? Daily तो हम नहीं इतना बेच पाएंगे. मैंने कहा नहीं, market है, बेचो. So उस चक्कर में हमने ODI sales शुरू किया. After that, we never saw the end of the day. We took it to 8,000 crores.
Incredible. So during this period, you were the sole distributor of Nokia in India.
And then they made the mistake of making multiple distributors. And then they made a mistake of not listing to customers, which is a different story.
Yeah. Nokia story is also, I think, they're nowhere close to the company they once were, and they kind of missed out.
So I was telling you about how things changed. So me and Shiv were invited to, with our families, to the Beijing Olympics by Nokia.
Achha.
So हम लोग गए वहाँ. So we were watching it. I mean, what a spectacle. I used to go and sell in China in the early 80s. And the China of then was a completely different world.
Yeah.
So, any case, we were having a drink in the evening. And then suddenly Shiv gets a call. So, after the 10 minutes of discussion, he said, okay, let me think about it. So, I said, क्या हुआ? कहता हमने एक bid किया था to buy a company in UK for 800 million pounds. And it is the largest SAP company in Europe. And if with that, we can really become big in SAP. But we've lost the opportunity because Infosys bid for it also. And today, Narayan Murthy went to the press to say we bought this company. So I said, it's a bada sad ho gaya. कहता नहीं, watch this space. So then whole night he was with the team on the phone. And we decided to outbid Infosys.
Achha.
And we actually did.
Incredible. Yeah.
And we bought that company. Infosys did not outbid us. Strangely. I don't know why. But we had that audacious thinking always.
Yeah.
Chalo, dekhte hain kya hota hai.
So on this audacious thinking, आपका book का you also titled it Just Aspire, and multiple times in conversation, this audacious thinking, bold, being first. What is the philosophy behind this? And if somebody youngster reading your book and they look at the title Just Aspire, इसका translation क्या है? What do youngsters take away from it? Why should I just aspire? And what does just aspiring mean for me?
You see, one of the key aspects of success in life is your aspiration.
Yeah.
Aspiration of a person, aspiration of a state, aspiration of a company, aspiration of a country. It's aspiration that makes things happen.
Yeah.
And this came to me very strongly when I went in the mid-90s for a program to Michigan University. And Dr. C.K. Prahlad used to teach there.
Correct.
So Shiv said that you must go and get taught by C.K. before you become president of the company. हम लोग तो management graduates थे नहीं. We were all engineers.
Yeah.
So he said, नहीं, थोड़ा सा management सीख लो. So I went there. And I'm sitting in the class with CK. And he very early few classes, he's talked about A is greater than R. So then he explained what it meant. He said, if you have the aspiration, resources will happen. And that's exactly the HCL story. What did we have? 1.86 lakhs. We needed a license, we got it. Because that aspiration was there. So that's when I decided, when I decided to write a book, I said, Aspire has to be in the title of the book. So I had many discussions with my editor on what should be the name. And suddenly he said, yaar wo just do it wala funda kyun nahi use karte? That's how we came with the whole idea of just aspire.
Got it. And आपको क्या लगता है कि aspiration लोगों के अंदर inborn होता है कि environment से, company culture से it can be further boosted and accelerated?
It's a very, to my mind, it's not something that you need to have it inborn in. It's something you can create, cultivate.
Right.
It takes time. Some people have it in them very early days. Some people take a bit of time.
Yeah.
But I think this country has phenomenal aspiration. When I did some research in rural India through one of my startups that was selling products into rural India, they came up with this thing, I think we're talking 15 years ago. He says, यार वहाँ तो मैं जहाँ भी जाता हूँ रूरल इंडिया में सब लोग एप्पल और सैमसंग खरीदना चाहते हैं. वो एस्पिरेशन इंडिया में है. So aspiration is something that is inborn in India as a culture. Somewhere we seem to have that, like entrepreneurship.
Right.
I mean, we have phenomenal entrepreneurship in this country. It's been there not today, but for years and years.
Right.
So that is there, and I think aspiration is what creates companies. And one day Modi ji also talked about it. He says, आपके पास अगर aspiration है तो आप जरूर succeed करोगे.
Right.
So these kind of things is what prompted me to call it Just Aspire. So therefore, I have written a lot about aspiration in the book. I've written about what creates startups. What is a startup? How do startups work? What entrepreneurship is all about? And why you need to be a great salesman if you are a CEO. And that's why one chapter is devoted to sales.
Right. No, absolutely. I think, anyone reading this book, I think will not only come away inspired, but also, you've covered your whole story in so much detail and so many anecdotes and principles and so on. So the tools also people can consider practicing and adopting, how they
One
work.
of the things that I wanted to do in the book, when I wrote it, I see should not be a boring autobiography.
बिल्कुल boring नहीं है सर एकदम आपने it's like a page turner.
मैंने करीब 5, 7, 10 autobiographies पढ़ी Indians की, and I found them I was struggling through them.
Correct.
So when I was writing and working with a research team, because I employed a research team.
अच्छा.
And I said इसके ऊपर research करो, मेरे anecdotes ढूंढो, ये करो, वो करो, काफी काम करना पड़ता है.
Right.
So when we were doing this thing, we actually felt anecdotes is the best way to do it.
Correct. That's right.
And we said this book has to be written like fiction. Because I'm a big fiction fan. I read fiction every day.
Right.
So I said, इसको fiction की तरह बनाना, easy reading. I have 5 pages just on one subject, why you should read.
तो उसके नाम बताइए, like, I think I also want to promote that idea.
See, actually, what I notice youngsters are doing today, they are watching videos on the phone. First of all,
videos भी नहीं, reels, मतलब videos तो मतलब लंबा हो जाता है, 30 सेकंड का
छोटी reels, and they're just stuck to their screen.
Yeah.
So, as a matter of fact, this is something that I inculcated in IIT Hyderabad when I founded it.
Acha.
And with Dr. UB Desai, I told him, I said, भैया मेरे को इस institute से nerds नहीं चाहिए. I don't want nerds coming out. I want people who have a wider perspective of life.
Yeah.
So we created a school of entrepreneurship, which I used to teach there.
Okay.
And we also introduced 36 fractals. These fractals were little one piece subjects.
Acha.
So you could get 1 credit, 2 credit, 1 credit, 2 credit. And you could do astronomy, you could do music, you could do drama.
Yeah.
And that's how we created HCL, IIT Hyderabad. We created people who were, like that. And one of the things we always used to say, read. I talked to them many times in the institute also. And that's something that I've always believed in. You'll be surprised, it is something that is part of my family. Everybody reads like crazy. My son and my daughter-in-law in Goa, my daughter-in-law is a bigger reader than anybody I've ever met. So she does something quite crazy, which I think every family should do. She gets the whole family together for 1 hour every day.
Yeah.
And they sit together and read.
Wow. Amazing.
So this is what expands your horizons.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if you read something about Prague and you visit Prague, you know everything. When I went to Prague, I said, I've read this, I've read this, I've seen this. It looks as if you know the place.
Right.
So I think reading is something that is absolutely critical for people to succeed. Because not only do you read about your subject, but you should read other things. So I call it a T. T on top is reading and knowing other things. And the length of the T is the subject that you are good at.
Right.
So the subject that you are good at, you should be brilliant in it.
Yeah.
But the rest of the things also you should know.
I really hope people listening to this take inspiration from this and at least pick up one book.
Yes,
Books can change
and pick up my book.
And pick up your book as well. Yeah. Start with that and boost people's aspiration and then give motivation for other books. So Ajay, after your post HCL career, I think you also very deliberately kind of chosen to commit yourself to nation building and you've been involved in some significant initiatives. I think 2 of them which are very critical, I think, for the future of the country. I think that we know we are living in the world of technology and autonomy in technology, indigenous industries, able to control, build technology here, which is pretty much going to be part of everyday life. So 2 of big initiatives are involved in semiconductor mission and national quantum mission. So I want to spend some time on that. Starting the semiconductor mission, where we as a country, what is the optimistic case on that and what we can do next 10 years to really be somewhat in control of our destiny there?
See, I've been involved with the government in many committees. And 30 years ago, I wrote that India must have 2 fabs. Nobody was listening. And we missed the boat. We missed the boat on all of hardware. Because 1989 government went and signed the ITA agreement with WTO.
Yeah.
And which made duty of imports or hardware in 1995 zero. The whole industry of hardware was destroyed overnight. Because the bigger companies like us survived somehow. But the smaller companies...
That was like IMF pressure to do that?
WTO
pressure.
And I don't know why we signed WTO. Because Brazil didn't sign, China didn't sign. They succeeded in doing hardware. We didn't. So this is where we went wrong. Anyway, come to today. 3 years ago, the government decided that finally they must do something in semiconductors. And that happened because of COVID. Because we just ran out of semiconductors. So for a country, the most critical aspect is tech sovereignty and strategic autonomy. Those are deeply connected. So very good thing that the government did. For the first time, this government said, we will have a semiconductor policy. So the Prime Minister announced the semiconductor policy 3 years ago. Last December was 3 years completed. And then they formed this India Semiconductor Mission. They appointed a CEO. They put in $10 billion to initially invest. And India said we were so late that we have no choice but to give the best incentives in the world. So we said, anybody setting up in India, we'll give 50% for the capex. And the states suddenly realized that my God, this is going to be a great industry. We should also participate.
Yeah.
So many states have announced 25% extra.
So 75% government invested.
75% of capex is paid for if you come to India. Very attractive.
Yeah.
But parallel to all this, the global market was also realizing the problems of COVID. Everybody went shortage of semiconductor. America said, we missed the bus. It's all gone to Taiwan.
Yeah.
So America started doing more semiconductors. Europe started doing more semiconductors. Everybody is setting up fabs. So there's a shortage of equipment to make. But anyway, we said we'll give 75%. Very tough job for the government to actually attract people. So when we got proposals, and 75% of the proposals were useless. You're not getting the right technology, you're not getting the right people, you didn't have the right business plan. There were some great people in the advisory group who actually rejected all the technical stuff. Vedanta announced, but the technology was not acceptable. So all that happened. But finally, one big breakthrough that the government managed to do was to get Micron into it. And I think that is a huge breakthrough.
The Micron is the Tata partnership?
No, Micron.
Okay.
Micron, they make memories. So Micron is owned by an Indian. He's the CEO.
Achha.
So he was met by Mr. Modi in America. And as a result of all of that, he decided to invest in India. I mean, we've been talking, I knew him for a long time. We were always talking to him. We used to actually market his product in India. So हम लोग उनसे बोलते रहते थे कि इंडिया तो आओ, इंडिया तो आओ. इंडिया में क्यों आए? So anyway, good thing is that became a big place to go. And then after Micron, many people started to look at India. Tata stepped in and said, we will do semiconductors. So they went and tied up with a Taiwan company. And we took the right decision in ISM, saying that let's not do latest cutting edge semiconductors. We should do semiconductors which are mass market semiconductors. Automobiles के लिए चाहिए, washing machine के लिए चाहिए, इन सब चीजों के लिए चाहिए. We should do 28 nanometers and above.
तब उससे धीरे-धीरे ecosystem build होगा.
हाँ. तो 28 nanometers is what went we after. Today there are 5 plants that are approved. A 6th one was already existing. 7th one was semiconductor complex. So semiconductor complex is being upgraded. Funding have been provided. A private company set up a semiconductor plant in Rajasthan.
Yeah.
And these are all packaging plants. So there's one fab that Tatas are doing in Gujarat and 4 other OSAT plants, which are basically packaging.
Okay.
So that's how the ecosystem has started developing. And then you'll be surprised, about 6 months ago, we had a Semicon conference here, which Ministry of Electronics called for. I mean, the who's who of the semiconductor industry came to India. It was mind-blowing. And the minister and the secretary, Mr. Krishnan, they conducted that meeting brilliantly.
Amazing.
And everybody who was sitting there said, we want to come to India. So it created that momentum.
Right. Incredible. So there is a very promising start, very heavily supported by the government, and looks like there are credible players are coming in. But and starting with the mass market, as you say, from there to being able to really play at the cutting edge, now we know we are moving into AI world. Today AI is all powered by these GPUs, which basically one company in the world controls. What is India game plan there, or what can be India game plan?
You see, I feel that at this moment, we are missing one very major piece. That is, what is our strength as a country? Our strength as a country is design, not manufacturing. We don't know anything about semiconductor manufacturing. But we know a lot about semiconductor design because world's best engineers are sitting in India, designing for the world. The NVIDIAs of the world, AMD, every sab log yahan design karte hain. So one of the things that I went and met the Honorable Minister last year, early year, and I said, sir, हमने सब कुछ तो कर रहे हैं, पर हम डिजाइन के ऊपर फोकस नहीं कर रहे. इंडिया ने एक छोटी सी डिजाइन स्कीम बनाई थी, कुछ was called DLI, Design Linked Incentive, unsuccessful. So I said, we must focus on becoming a product nation. Let's make Indian hardware products, which we missed the bus, and we should make our own chips in India, design our own chips. So we created a task force which consisted of 10, 12 very good industry people. We gave us a proposal. That proposal is still under consideration. So that is something that I'm very much after, that the government must now go after design. And we've created a list of 30 chips and 30 products. I said, इनको टॉप डाउन अप्रोच करिए, बॉटम अप मत करिए. बॉटम अप जो DLI स्कीम है वो बॉटम अप है. जिसने भी स्कीम आके बोल दिया हम ये चिप बनाएंगे, गवर्नमेंट पैसे दे देती है. गवर्नमेंट जब पैसे दे रही है वो बहुत कम है. तो हमने बोला ये 30 करोड़ में कुछ नहीं होगा. You must go up to 200 crores. So इस तरह से हम चाहते हैं कि we must now create this design ecosystem. I call it cart before the horse. You'll have the fabs in 3 years, but no customer in India. Every business you'll have to get from abroad.
Correct.
Which is very tough. I mean, people will buy from Samsung, people will buy from Taiwan. Why would they come to India? So this is something that I still think is a big weakness in our plan. But now the government is coming up with the next version of ISM, which is ISM 2.0, and we believe that another 10 to 15 billion dollars is going to be put into it.
Got it.
So what is currently missing is the design piece, the product piece, and display fabs, and compound semiconductor fabs. Compound semiconductor हमको इसलिए चाहिए कि we need a lot of power products in India. So सारे charger और ये वो सब they use compound semiconductors because you need to have products, chips which are low power.
Is it fair to say that for India to have strategic autonomy and this, very inspiring vision of Viksit Bharat, semiconductor में will have to become a player? उसके बिना नहीं हो सकता.
नहीं हो सकता, बिल्कुल नहीं हो सकता. हो ही नहीं सकता, क्योंकि मेरे को एक प्रोडक्ट दिखा दीजिए, मेरा का पेंसिल में सेमीकंडक्टर नहीं होता है. आप कोई भी प्रोडक्ट उठाएंगे, ये प्रोडक्ट ले लीजिए, ये प्रोडक्ट ले लीजिए, कोई भी प्रोडक्ट ले लीजिए, सेमीकंडक्टर तो इज पार्ट ऑफ इट. यू मेक ट्रेन्स, द न्यू ट्रेन्स दैट इंडिया हैज डिजाइंड, 30,000 चिप्स इन अ ट्रेन दैट वी डिजाइंड. सो देयर इज नो प्रोडक्ट विदाउट.
और अभी वो सारे चिप बाहर से आते हैं,
सब बाहर से आते हैं. तो यही हम बोल रहे हैं गवर्नमेंट को कि दो चीजें करिए. एक तो क्रिएट द मार्केट फॉर चिप्स. If you allow Chinese chips to enter, you are actually taking a huge risk. क्योंकि they have backdoors. सारा डेटा वापस जाएगा चाइना में.
जैसे अभी हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं, इस माइक में चाइनीज चिप होगी and some they can easily hack it.
Easily, and it's been done. There are enough proof available with intelligence agencies that data goes back to China. So the point that we are making is that सारे chips हमको इंडिया में replace करने चाहिए चाइनीज से. And what government should do? Every product that they buy for government should not have Chinese chips.
Correct.
Should have only Indian chips. आप CCTV देख लीजिए, सारी कंट्री में हर जगह चाइनीज CCTVs लगे हुए. उनको हमारे हर रोड, हर विलेज के बारे में ज्ञान है.
अजय, आई वांट टू रिपीट दिस कि जो हम लोग को हर जगह CCTV कैमरा दिखते हैं, सड़क पे होते हैं, रेलवे स्टेशन पे, बस स्टेशन पे, घर पे, वो सबके अंदर चाइनीज चिप्स है.
They are made in China. CCTVs itself are made in China. Most of them.
And most of them probably have backdoors and there's...
There's a proof of it. There was an attendance machine. Modi ji, when he came in, he told all the government officers and central government कि boss आपको time पे आने का है. सुबह 9 बजे. तो attendance machine सारी offices में लग गई.
ठीक है.
Last year, I think first quarter last year, intelligence agencies discovered that those attendance machines had Chinese chips, and all the data has gone back to China. And today, China knows the name, age, details of every government officer in central government.
That's incredible. That's.
हम क्या कर रहे हैं? हमको तो ये सब हमें सोचना चाहिए. दूसरी कंट्रीज में ना CCTVs from China have been banned for 4 years. UK doesn't buy, US doesn't buy. हम happily खरीदते हैं. Last year, government decided to ban. But what is now happening? वो secret route से आ रहे हैं. But chips तो सारे फिर भी Chinese.
Right.
So ये हमें बड़ा चेंज लाना पड़ेगा कि हम गवर्नमेंट मस्ट क्रिएट द मार्केट फॉर इंडियन चिप्स. दे शुड स्पेसिफाई इन ऑल देयर टेंडर्स कि भाई आप इंडियन चिप्स लगाइए अपने प्रोडक्ट में, तब हम आपको एक्सेप्ट करेंगे. आर्मी ने ऑलरेडी स्टार्ट कर दिया.
वेरी गुड. अजय, आई थिंक इन वेरियस प्लेसेस यू आर कॉल्ड एज फादर ऑफ इंडियन हार्डवेयर, and which been obviously a very pioneer in doing all these projects early on, but now also you are almost leading the country agenda from the forefront. Not only with the semiconductor mission but also with this national quantum mission. तो उसके बारे में बताइए. क्वांटम सेमीकंडक्टर तो लोग समझते हैं कि चिप्स सब चीज़ में यूज़ होती हैं एंड सो ऑन, बट क्वांटम मिशन ज़्यादा थोड़ा बहुत अब न्यूज़ में आना शुरू हो गया है, बट ज़्यादा लोगों को पता नहीं है कि क्यों है वो. मतलब फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल क्वांटम टेक्नोलॉजीज़ वो इम्पॉर्टेंट क्यों है, और एज ए कंट्री थ्रू इस नेशनल क्वांटम मिशन हम लोग व्हाट इज़ आवर एस्पिरेशन, क्या करना चाह रहे हैं?
देखिए, अभी जो आपका टेक्नोलॉजी है वो बाइनरी होती है. 0 and 1 से सब कुछ कहानी चलती है. बट दे हैव लिमिटेशंस. योर क्लासिकल कंप्यूटर्स जो हैं वो 0 और 1 पे चलते हैं.
ठीक.
Many years ago, quantum mechanics was born. Many great scientists like Einstein, etc., and our Bose from Calcutta, they were the ones that created many things around quantum mechanics. And there was a lot of thought at that stage that someday there would be technology that would take us beyond classical computers, which are 0 and 1.
Yeah.
And that would depend on quantum mechanics. And what's the difference between a typical classical computer and quantum computer? Quantum computer में 0 और 1 जो है वो 0 and 1 भी हो सकता है. तो उससे क्या होता है कि पैरेलल प्रोसेसिंग होती है. बड़ी सिंपल लैंग्वेज में बताना चाहता हूँ मैं. तो उससे क्या है कि बहुत मच फास्टर है, मच फास्टर, बट नॉट फॉर एवरी एप्लीकेशन. ये अकाउंटिंग के लिए कोई फायदा नहीं है इसको. यू नीड quantum computers for very high-end scientific work like drug discovery, like climate,
Correct.
like many other things that cannot be done by classical computers. I mean, it's known that what would take 1,000,000 years to do on a classical computer, when the quantum computers are ready, it could do in 1 second. But these are all dreams that everybody has about quantum. It may not exactly be this, but that is where the technology is going. Now, again, quantum today has become more important than when we started quantum mission. Reason? AI is coming in. Now, a combination of AI and quantum can dramatically change the world. Because AI will add so many features to quantum that the drug discovery itself, what it takes to, today, for example, a Pfizer would spend 15 years of research on creating one molecule.
And probably $1 billion or something.
More than that. That will get reduced to 2 to 4 years when you start using quantum and AI. So, when quantum mission was started, our objective was that we can't be left behind. And the government again saw through this 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Department of Science and Technology started a program on this, which was pre-quantum mission. And they started creating capability in quantum. And they were very far-reaching thinking. And this nothing happened like this in semiconductors, happened in quantum. And so what happened was that the principal scientific advisor and DST secretary put together a program to create the quantum mission, got it approved by the government in 2022, 2023, and a quantum mission got launched.
And quantum mission का objective क्या है? Let's say if quantum mission is successful, 5 साल में क्या outcome होने चाहिए जिससे आपको लगेगा कि it has done its job?
देखिए, उन्होंने उन दिनों 8-year program बनाया और targets बनाए. अच्छा. कि 8 years में हमारे पास 1000 qubit का कंप्यूटर होना चाहिए.
अभी दुनिया में नहीं है, कहीं पे भी नहीं है.
बिल्कुल है.
1000 का हो चुका है.
हो गया ऑलरेडी. अच्छा. ऑलरेडी IBM के पास है और एक और है एटम कंप्यूटिंग, इस तरह का नाम है उसका. Okay. उनके पास 1000 हैं. बट ठीक है, हमने एक डिसीजन लिया कि हम एक क्वांटम कंप्यूटर्स बनाएंगे, क्वांटम कम्युनिकेशन करेंगे, क्वांटम सेंसिंग करेंगे और क्वांटम मटेरियल्स के ऊपर रिसर्च करेंगे. सो इट्स ऑल रिसर्च ओरिएंटेड.
तो इनमें से मतलब कंपनी भी आएंगी, उसका एक्सपेक्टेशन है कि अभी मोर रिसर्च ओरिएंटेड है.
देखिए, दिस इज द फर्स्ट मिशन वेयर देयर इज अ टारगेट फॉर रिसर्चर्स.
अच्छा.
अभी तक रिसर्चर्स पेपर्स पब्लिश करते थे. हमने जब लॉन्च किया, सो द DST सेक्रेटरी प्रोफेसर करंडीकर एंड मी एंड प्रोफेसर सूद, 3 of us were there. हमने एक चीज साफ साफ बता दी सारे रिसर्चर्स को कि जो पैसा आपको मिलेगा will be on condition that you make products. अगर आप सिर्फ पेपर्स बनाओगे, रिसर्च तो जरूर करनी है, रिसर्च जरूर करिए, पेपर्स भी लिखिए, बट दैट शुड ऑल रिजल्ट एट द एंड ऑफ अ वे विद अ प्रोडक्ट.
करेक्ट.
सो हम बोलते हैं TRL 1 to TRL 9 हमारी एक लैंग्वेज होती है साइंस में कि जो टेक्नोलॉजी रेडीनेस लेवल है वो 1 to 9 होती है. 9 से वो प्रोडक्ट बन जाता है. तो हमने सबको यही बोला है कि आपको TRL 7 TRL 8 तक तो ले जाना ही है और उसके बाद you can hand it over to startups to take it to market. Or some of your scientists want to create a startup, you go ahead and start. But parallel to that हमने ये सोचा कि हम startups को बहुत attention देंगे. So pretty early days, we created a startup program.
अच्छा.
But the good news at this moment is that on quantum computer, we have barely reached 25 qubits in this country. TIFR with TCS has developed a 7-qubit computer. A startup in Bangalore has created a 25-qubit computer. So when we started seeing like these things, we said we should put a lot of attention on startups. So we called about 40 startups and said, tell us about you, what you're doing. 14 लोग को हमने personally interview किया. Me, Professor Karandikar, Professor Sood, and a technical committee. We all sat and listened to them. Said, आपको चाहिए क्या? आप बताइए. We discovered that if we go by the normal way of working, the government does के 50 लाख दे दो, 1 करोड़ दे दो, 2 करोड़ दे दो, 3 करोड़ से काम नहीं बनेगा. Because this is a huge research-oriented work. Lot of discovery is there. And they also need equipment to do this. So we created a completely new scheme. We created a team which actually created the startup policy, which was actually headed by our investor.
अच्छा.
And we said, his name was Srikant Shastri. He's an Indian Angel Network member, and now he heads the Geospatial Mission. So we requested Srikant that why don't you lead this effort to create this? And the thinking that we had कि इसमें आप 2 करोड़ 3 करोड़ की बात मत करिए. Take it up to 30 crores per startup. Because we've got 600 crores allocated for startups.
Got it.
So we said we can be liberal. But the challenge that came in was that the finance department said, भैया आप 30 करोड़ तो दे रहे हो, इसके अगेंस्ट क्या गारंटी है? ये लोग पैसे लेके चले जाएंगे, हमें क्या मिलेगा? What will the government gain? So we came up with this whole concept of CCPS.
अच्छा.
And said कि भाई you will get 30% discount on exit, which then the government can has the option to take.
Got it.
In which case they are safe. So उस strategy से हमने completely नया startup scheme start किया, and we said that this startup scheme must be closed every 3 months.
Got it.
So time frame में लोगों को पैसे मिलेंगे, ज़्यादा पैसे मिलेंगे.
Sure.
So 8 startups have been allocated 76 crores, and all of them have signed SHAs with the government to take the money.
Incredible. And इस केस में मतलब we can say कि India is a pioneer in some ways because quantum technologies, while research has been going on for a long period of time, but companies and products are not in production or revenue generating stage.
No, things have changed. Look, when the government wrote the plan, cabinet note was created, it was a different time. I'm telling you, from the time I've come over as the chairman, every week a new technology comes. Every week there is a breakthrough in quantum. We are running behind today because of this. When I came in, I said, maybe we are 3 years, 2 years, 3 years behind. In communication, for example, quantum communication, we are ahead in the world.
Ahead.
हमारे पास ऐसे startups हैं which have world-class products, and they're actually marketing their products in America.
Right.
So communication में मुझे कोई problem नहीं.
Right.
Because lot of pioneering was done in IIT Madras, where the science was actually looked at in communication, which then resulted in some startups.
Got it.
So communication में हम अच्छे चल रहे हैं. Quantum computer में बहुत challenges.
अच्छा.
Because what has now happened in the last 1 year is that major announcements have come from every kind of company you can think of. And countries are vying to become top shot in quantum because of one major reason. The major reason is that when you have a powerful enough quantum computer, it can break your current cybersecurity codes. So suddenly your financial systems can come down, your electrical grids can come down, you will be in trouble. And China can do this without anybody knowing कि वहाँ क्या हो रहा है किसी को भी नहीं पता.
Right.
Are they sitting with 2000 qubit computer? Nobody knows. Of course, you'll have to have a very, very powerful computer, which we are not there as yet. It'll be another 3 years, 4 years, but we don't know when it'll be. Because some major changes have taken place in last 2 months.
समझ गया. Including Microsoft announcement about
Microsoft has announced a chip, which you can actually do add up and create 1 million qubit product. Of course, whenever Microsoft announces anything, everybody says ये vaporware है. वो तो होता है. तो वो सब देखने पड़ेगा. अभी बहुत सारे physicists इसको believe नहीं कर रहे हैं. But I think they are in the right track.
Right.
Just yesterday, a company has announced in America a chip with with a photonic chip.
Acha.
Same strategy. 1 month ago, a company announced a chip by which you can actually connect these chips and add, and it becomes multiprocessor.
Right.
So suddenly I'm trying to see that the quantum computing race has really hotted up.
समझ गया. तो क्वांटम कंप्यूटिंग का जीपीटी मूवमेंट कभी भी आ सकता है.
कभी भी आ रहा है, एवरी डे आ रहा है. तो इसलिए मैं बहुत वरीड हूँ अभी. एंड इसमें हमें अपने रिसर्चर्स के साथ बैठ के हम लोग डिस्कस करने वाले हैं कि हमको अगला क्या करना चाहिए. बिकॉज जो हमने डिसाइड किया था व्हाट फॉर क्वांटम कंप्यूटर, आई थिंक वी आर गोइंग टू बी आउटडेटेड.
करेक्ट.
1000 qubits 8 years, आई मीन इट मेक्स नो सेंस एनीमोर.
करेक्ट.
So हमें इसको रीथिंकिंग करनी पड़ेगी. Somewhere we'll need to probably go and pick up these chips that Microsoft is making, or other people who have announced. PSI Quantum has announced this chip. Can you imagine this particular company in America which announced this chip yesterday, photonic chip, day before yesterday? This company was bought, invested into by Australia as a country.
Wow.
Investing $700 million.
Wow.
Now look at what countries are doing. They're not waiting.
Correct.
To do their own thing. They went to an American company. They said, you set up your facility in Brisbane. We'll give you $700 million.
I think आप but the implication है कि पहले पास में जैसे कंट्री सोचते थे मिसाइल्स के बारे में, स्पेस प्रोग्राम के बारे में, न्यूक्लियर बॉम्ब्स के बारे में, वो मतलब एआई क्वांटम टेक्नोलॉजी के बारे में वैसे सोचना पड़ेगा.
देखिए हमें ये सब तो वेपनाइज हो रहा है. और अगर ये वेपनाइज होगा तो वी हैव टू बी वेरी क्लियर दैट आइदर वी आर इन द गेम या नॉट इन द गेम.
करेक्ट.
तो इसके लिए इंडिया हैज नो ऑप्शन बट टू क्रिएट इट्स ओन जीपीयूज. इट क्रिएट्स इट्स ओन AI models. It's got to create your own quantum chips. I mean, we really need to think very differently. Right. And in this unipolar world, you will be tomorrow denied technology anytime. Already GPUs पे अमेरिका ने डाल दिया है कहानी.
Correct.
Right. But China ने AI में जो किया है last 6 months, so many free models that they have put up in the market, open source, it's changed the market.
Correct.
So, is this the time for us to create our own model or think differently?
Yeah. I think a lot for country to think about.
Yeah.
Ajay, you talk about this in this phrase product nation. तो उसका थोड़ा सा just as a concluding note, आपका vision बताइए कि what does it really mean for us to become a product nation in the deep technology areas? और उसके लिए क्या optimism है और क्या challenge है which will come in the way?
See, 2 years ago, few of us got together and we said that we need to now re-look at India's economic policy. And we created a group called Vishwamitra Economic Policy Group. And we a bunch of engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, economists, etc. All of us started to think about it. And we started to involve the government also. We brought in all the various top officers of the government. We had off-sites with them. Piyush Goyal ji joined just for an off-site. So we've sort of sensitized the government around this whole new way of thinking. And this is fundamentally based on a concept which was created in the United States back in 1944, where whenever Bush was the chief scientist in America, created a manifesto which defined how America can be ahead of everybody else. And he wrote very clearly, only science and technology can take you there.
Yeah.
And which happened. So NASA got set up, NSF got set up, DARPA got set up. तो हमने बोला हमको भी ये करना पड़ेगा. और हमारी कंट्री में सबसे बड़ा वीकनेस है हम R&D में इन्वेस्ट ही नहीं करते. प्राइवेट सेक्टर तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं करते. और जो गवर्नमेंट इन्वेस्टमेंट होती है उसके रिजल्ट्स नहीं आते. पेपर्स बहुत बनते हैं, प्रोडक्ट्स नहीं बनते. तो हमने जब मार्केट को देखा, द होल वर्ल्ड इज मूविंग अवे फ्रॉम सर्विसेज टू प्रोडक्ट्स. तो हमारी टोटल डिपेंडेंस सर्विसेज पे है. 60% of our whole GDP is services. China में 90% is commodities and products, 10% is services. Yes, the software services business has done brilliantly for the country. Yeah. But can we just stay there? With all the issues of AI and automation coming in, the software services industry has quite a lot of headwind.
Yeah.
Therefore, as a country, we need to rethink our strategy. And it has to be based on R&D. It has to be based on creating products. Has to be based on creating technology leadership in many areas. So we selected 10, 12 areas and we said 15 years from now, maybe we will have 3 or 5 companies which will be top 5 in the world. That's our dream. So we went with that dream to the government. Government has accepted it, and they've even put out funds for that. And I think there's a very deep understanding within the government कि इसको करना है. और जो मेरी नई एडिशन आई है बुक की, जो हार्ड कॉपी नहीं है, पेपर बैक है, उसमें मैंने जो इंट्रोडक्शन चेंज कर दिया.
अच्छा.
आई हैव एडेड अ न्यू इंट्रोडक्शन व्हिच इज टॉकिंग अबाउट प्रोडक्ट नेशन.
बहुत बढ़िया.
बिकॉज मेरा ये व्यू है, एंड हम सब लोगों का ये व्यू है कि अगर हम ये नहीं करेंगे तो हम इस तरह से फंसने वाले हैं जिस तरह से हम न्यूक्लियर में फंसे थे और स्पेस में फंसे थे. और हमको अपनी चीजें बनानी पड़ी, हमें कोई चॉइस नहीं था, क्योंकि पूरे वर्ल्ड ने बोल दिया आपको हम यूरेनियम नहीं देंगे, हम आपको स्पेस के टेक्नोलॉजी
तो
कुछ नहीं देंगे, और हमने सब कुछ खुद कर लिया. तो हम क्यों नहीं बना सकते?
ऑफ कोर्स.
तो इसीलिए हम बोल रहे हैं कि हमको अपने चिप्स बनाने हैं, हमने जीपीयू बनाने, हमको इस तरह की टेक्नोलॉजी बनानी है जिससे हम एआई और इस तरह की चीजों में आगे बढ़े, लीडरशिप ले. अगर हमने लीडरशिप नहीं ली तो हम कॉलोनी बन जाएंगे फिर से, या तो हम चाइना की कॉलोनी बन जाएंगे या किसी और की कॉलोनी बन जाएंगे.
नहीं अजय, आपका मैसेज इज लाउड एंड क्लियर. आई थिंक इज़ वेरी वेरी इंस्पायरिंग टू सी कि आप ऑलरेडी मतलब इंडिया में टेक्नोलॉजी प्रोडक्ट को पिछले 50 साल से काफ़ी तरीके से कंट्रीब्यूट कर चुके हैं, और अभी भी सेमीकंडक्टर मिशन से, क्वांटम मिशन से, विश्वामित्र ग्रुप की तरह से, एंड काफ़ी मतलब जोश से, कन्विक्शन से you are inspiring people and also creating detailed blueprint, etc. So it's great to see. I think country can only be grateful and thankful for all your contribution. It's so nice to talk to you and hear
thank you so much. Thank you.
At SparX, we aim to bring to you stories of exponential impact. We share in-depth analysis of what goes behind success stories. If you find our conversations interesting, you can join us by subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can also listen to SparX on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any other audio platform of your choice. If you have any suggestions on who we should invite or what topics we need to cover, just let us know in the comments. We are always listening, looking for ways to improve, and keep getting better as we go along.